when this veteran poured his soul into a heart-wrenching tribute for fallen soldiers. Donald Trump's unexpected reaction left everyone in the room stunned. The ballroom shimmered beneath the golden glow of crystal chandeliers, casting a soft light over an audience filled with high-profile guests. At the prestigious Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles, the annual Freedom and Honor Gala had drawn an elite crowd. Politicians, celebrities, and business tycoons, all united in their support for wounded veterans. Servers moved gracefully between tables, refilling champagne flutes, while hushed conversations wove through the air. At the head of the room, a grand elevated stage, framed by deep blue velvet curtains, stood as the evening's centerpiece. Behind it, a massive American flag hung proudly, its stars catching the light each time the fabric gently rippled from the air vents above. Seated at the front table, President Donald Trump subtly adjusted his tie while listening to the evening's MC, a retired four-star general, share powerful stories of resilience and sacrifice, tales of soldiers who had given more than most could ever imagine. Trump, known for his commanding presence, sat with an air of attentiveness. But beneath that, something stirred in his expression, a rare moment of quiet reflection. As the speeches carried on, guests clapped politely, offering nods and smiles at the appropriate moments. Yet, there was a certain predictability to it all. They had been to galas before, heard stirring speeches, written generous checks. But tonight would be different. They had gone home, feeling like they had done their part. Then, a pause. The MC cleared his throat, his eyes scanning the room before he spoke. "Tonight," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "we have a very special guest. A man who has witnessed more than most of us could ever fathom, and lived to tell the tale." The energy in the room shifted instantly. Conversations halted, glasses were set back down onto linen-draped tables, and even Trump leaned forward slightly, his attention sharpening. The general continued. Sergeant Lucas Barrett served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. He was awarded the Purple Heart for injuries sustained during an ambush outside Kandahar. But what he's about to share with us tonight, it goes beyond the battlefield. Please, give a warm welcome to a true American hero. Polite applause rippled across the room as a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 50s made his way to the stage. His slight but noticeable limp hinted at the battles he had endured. Though his crisp navy blue suit gave him a dignified presence, it couldn't quite mask the stiffness in his movements, a reminder of the injuries that had nearly taken his life. Lucas Barrett stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat, and adjusted the stand with a steady hand. His gaze swept across the room. Powerful men and women, some of whom had once sent soldiers like him into war. Then, after a deep breath, he began to speak, but no one was ready for what happened next. For a brief moment, silence settled over the ballroom. It wasn't the awkward kind that comes with uncertainty. No, it was something heavier, a weighted anticipation, the kind that made people sit up a little straighter, lean in just a little closer. Lucas Barrett let the quiet linger. He wasn't a man who rushed his words. Years of service had taught him that the true weight of a message wasn't in how quickly it was spoken, but in how deeply it was felt. Adjusting the microphone again, his fingers brushed against the cold metal stand. His eyes flicked over the crowd, senators, CEOs, Hollywood elites, before finally landing on President Trump, who was watching him intently. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight," Lucas finally said, his voice even, steady. "I know these kinds of events are about raising money, showing support, standing behind the men and women serve this country. But I also know that, for many, it's easy to forget what that truly means." The room remained silent. He exhaled slowly. "I don't say that with bitterness," he continued. "I say it because I've been there. I've seen what war does to men. I've seen what it takes from them. I've seen the ones who never made it home. For a long time, he admitted, he didn't know how to carry that weight. But then, one night, lying in a hospital bed, his body battered, more broken bones than he could count, and a future that felt uncertain at best, he did the only thing he could. A pause. His gaze dropped to his hands. When he looked up again, something in his expression shifted. "I wrote a song." A murmur rippled through the audience, not out of doubt, but because no one had expected it. "It's not a song about me," he clarified, shaking his head. "It's about the ones who never got the chance to stand on a stage like this. The ones who never made it past 20. The ones who fought beside me, but never got to come home." Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small, creased piece of paper. Its worn edges told a story of countless times it had been folded and unfolded. "I wrote this for them, and tonight I want to share it with you." He nodded toward the pianist in the corner of the room. A single mournful note rang through the air, the piano's sound both soft and haunting. Lucas closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and began to sing. Within seconds, the entire room would be fighting back tears. "I was just a young man. They called my name, raised my hand, and I fought through the flame. Left my home, left my past behind. For the red, white, and blue, I gave it all, laid it on the line. Marching through the desert, through the rain and snow. Brothers beside me, we never stand alone. We bled for a promise, for a flag that still waves, for the land of the free, for the home of the brave. Blood on the battlefield, echoes of pain. Freedom ain't free, it's the price that we pay. I fought for the fallen, I fight for the strong, for the ones who stand tall when the world does them wrong. Letters from home kept me pushing through. Mama said, 'Son, we believe in you.' But I've seen too much, lost too many friends. Scars on my soul, they'll never mend. Still I stand unshaken, my heart beats true. For the flag, for the dream, for the red, white, and blue. No regrets, no surrender, no turning away. I'd do it again, even if the night felt grey. Blood on the battlefield, echoes of pain. Freedom ain't free, it's the price that we pay. I fought for the fallen, I fight for the strong, for the ones who stand tall when the world does them wrong. Now, I walk these streets where I used to play. A soldier's returned, but I ain't the same. Some see a hero, some just see the past. But I still hear the shots, feel the dust, the blast. So I stand with my brothers, those here and those gone. For the land of the free, we keep marching home. Raise that flag high, let the air ring. For the cost of freedom, we forever sing. The first notes of Lucas Barrett's voice filled the ballroom, deep, steady, yet carrying something that made people hold their breath. It wasn't just the melody, it was the weight behind it. The last note hung in the air, fading into a silence so thick, it was almost suffocating. Then, applause. But not polite clapping, not the kind of applause given out of obligation at a fancy gala. This was different. It was raw. It was real. It was loud. People rose to their feet, some clapping, others wiping away silent tears. A few simply stood, hands pressed together in front of them, as if still absorbing what they had just witnessed. But amid the thunderous ovation, one man remained seated, President Trump. He hadn't moved. His hands, still clasped together, tightened slightly. His gaze was fixed on Lucas, not just watching him, seeing him. Then, slowly, he stood. But what he did next would leave the entire room speechless. The applause roared through the ballroom, but Trump didn't acknowledge it right away. He remained still. His hands unfolded slowly as he exhaled, his gaze never leaving Lucas Barrett. Then he stepped forward, not with the quick, rehearsed movements of a politician playing to the moment, but with deliberate, measured steps, the kind of movement that carried weight, the kind that signaled something real. The room watched, holding its collective breath, as Trump moved toward the stage. His face wasn't the one people were used to seeing at rallies or press conferences. No broad grin. No nods of acknowledgement to the cameras. His expression was serious, somber, even. Lucas Barrett, still standing at the microphone, met his gaze. For a moment, neither man spoke. Cameras clicked. Flashes captured the moment as the President of the United States walked up the steps, approaching the soldier. Then, he did something no one expected. Trump extended his hand. Lucas hesitated, a mere second, before grasping it. The handshake was firm, lingering. It wasn't just a photo-op moment. It was something unspoken. Something understood only by men who knew what sacrifice looked like. Then, in a rare moment of vulnerability, Trump placed his other hand on Lucas's shoulder. A hushed stillness fell over the room. Cameras kept rolling, but no one moved. No one spoke. Finally, Trump leaned in, his voice just loud enough for the microphone to catch his words. "They'll never be forgotten." Lucas swallowed hard, his grip tightening for a brief second before he nodded. Not out of formality, but out of understanding. Trump let go, then turned back toward the audience. His expression had shifted, not exactly softened, but more reflective, more grounded. Then he clapped. Within seconds, the entire room erupted once again, louder than before. But this time, it wasn't just for Lucas. It wasn't just for the song. It was for every soldier who never got the chance to stand on that stage. And what happened next? It would ensure that this moment wouldn't just be remembered. It would be talked about across the entire country. The event should have moved on. The next speaker should have taken the stage. The gala should have continued as planned. But this wasn't just another moment. As Lucas stepped down from the stage, he felt a firm grip on his arm. Trump wasn't done talking. "Walk with me," the president said, his voice low but steady. Lucas hesitated for just a second before nodding. The two men moved toward the edge of the ballroom, away from the cameras, away from the prepared speeches, away from the scripted pleasantries. A small group of aides and Secret Service agents hovered nearby. But this was a conversation that needed no audience. Trump turned to him, his eyes sharper now, focused. "That song," he said, pausing. "That wasn't just music. That was—" He stopped, shaking his head slightly, as if searching for the right words. Lucas nodded. His voice was calm. It was the truth. Trump let out a breath, still studying him. "I've met a lot of veterans, heard a lot of stories, but I've never heard it put like that." He paused. "You served in Afghanistan?" Lucas shifted slightly, the weight of memories pressing against his chest. "Yes, sir. 2 tours. First time I left, I was 22. Second time—" His voice trailed off. Trump gave a small nod. "And that's when you got hit?" Lucas didn't flinch. "Yes, sir." A beat of silence passed between them. "Do you still talk to any of the men from your unit?" Trump asked. Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. "The ones who made it home?" "Yes." Then, softer. "Too many didn't." The weight of those words settled between them. Trump exhaled. "You know, I get criticized a lot. People say I don't understand the military. that I don't feel what they feel. Maybe they're right." He glanced at Lucas. "But I listen. And tonight, I heard you." Lucas studied him for a long moment. He wasn't sure what to say to that. Trump continued. "This song, this story, people need to hear it. Not just in this room. Not just tonight." He straightened, glancing toward one of his aides. "Get this out there. Make sure every veteran in this country hears it." Lucas blinked. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. This was something bigger. Within hours, clips of the performance flooded the internet. The video spread, social media, news stations, morning talk shows. Some headlines called it a powerful tribute. Others called it a rare emotional moment for a president often seen as unshakable. But the real impact, it wasn't in the headlines. It was in the emails, the messages, from soldiers he had never met, from Gold Star families who had lost their sons and daughters, from veterans who had felt invisible. Until now. It was in the phone calls from the men he had served with, voices thick with emotion. I needed to hear that. It was in the way one song managed to do what years of speeches never could, remind the world of the faces behind the sacrifice. But there was still one more thing Lucas needed to do. The days following the gala were a blur. Lucas Barrett had never been one for attention. Yet, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Veterans. Families of fallen soldiers. Strangers who had never set foot in a war zone but felt the weight of his words. The video of his performance had spread beyond anything he had imagined. Talk shows debated it. News anchors analyzed it. But none of that mattered to Lucas. What mattered? The voices on the other end of the calls. A man from Oklahoma who had lost his younger brother in Afghanistan. A woman from Texas who had served, but never felt seen. A father from Ohio who had once folded a flag over the coffin of his only son. Every message carried the same theme. Thank you for saying what we couldn't. And yet, amidst the flood of messages, one stood out. It wasn't from a journalist. It wasn't from a politician. It was from a woman named Marjorie Tillman, the mother of Private Jason Tillman, a young soldier from Lucas's unit, who never made it home. Lucas read her words, over and over. "I never got to hear my son's voice again, but last night, I heard it in your song." His hands trembled slightly as he typed back, "He'll never be forgotten." And that's when Lucas knew this wasn't the end of something. This was the beginning. He took a deep breath, staring out at the California sunset from his small apartment. The war had taken a lot from him, but it had also left him with something he never realized he carried, the responsibility to keep telling their stories. The next morning, he dialed the number that had been left in his inbox. Not a media request, not a politician, but a small non-profit, one that helped veterans tell their stories through music. And just like that, one song turned into a movement. Because the truth is, no soldier is ever truly gone, as long as their story is told. There are moments in life that remind us of what really matters, moments that cut through the noise, through the politics, through the divisions, and remind us of the people behind the headlines. Lucas Barrett's story wasn't just about a song. It was about honor, about sacrifice, about the cost of freedom, and maybe, just maybe, it was about reminding the world that some voices, no matter how quiet, deserve to be heard. If this story moved you, share it, because sometimes the greatest tribute we can give is simply remembering If you believe in honoring those who have served, consider supporting veteran organizations that help our heroes transition back to civilian life. Every story matters. Every voice counts. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters.